people watching us live who've put comments in the chat box. Hello and welcome to this Drive Live with an Engineer. I'm just, my name's Dion Knowles. I'm the marketing manager at Tech Equipment, and today I am joined by Zach. Zach is an engineer from New York, and he's had about 5 to 6 years in his engineering career, and we'll be talking about his career to date. Are you there, Zach?
Hey, Dion. Yes. Glad
Fantastic. How are you today? How's things? I've had a bit of a fraught moment getting all my tech sorted because I'm not in my usual setup. You feeling ready for this?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. Well, I can see on my phone here that we have a couple of people who've already joined us and put comments in the chat box. I want to say hello to Adnan and Chris Rice. Now, Chris is going to be joining us in February. He's going to be talking about his career as well. If you're out there watching us live, maybe you know Zach yourself, do put a comment in the chat box so that, and maybe you've got any feedback, positive only, please. Into that chat
Please.
box. Well, or constructive feedback is what we like to say. Okay, so let me start by, let's have a look at your career then, Zach. You started out studying to be a mechanical engineer. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You did a mechanical engineering degree.
Yeah, both undergraduate and in grad school, mechanical engineering.
What was the motivation to make you think this is what I want to be a mechanical engineer?
You know, and I think this is the cliche engineer story, but growing up, I was the kid obsessed with cars, boats, planes, and I think from a very young age, like I remember second, third grade, so maybe I was 8 or 9, you know, my parents kind of telling me, oh, you should be an engineer. And just being fascinated by these big mechanical systems and kind of how they work has just been, you know, as far back as I can remember. Actually, so the goal was always, I want to study naval architecture because I want to design boats.
All right, okay.
Yeah, and then that is something I did look into. However, when it came time for college, the options for universities that are that focused aren't that many, and as well as I kind of figured, all right, what's next step up on that branch as far as broader? And so, like, do I want to really commit to such a narrow focus? And I figured mechanical engineering really would include a lot of disciplines that I liked about boats, but really would be applicable in a variety of applications. And I'm glad I chose that path because I like mechanical engineering.
Excellent. And now you've not, you've worked for one singular company throughout your career, and it's been quite a small company. And to some, they aspire to work for the large, big names. And you particularly have really enjoyed that experience of working for a small company, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You know, I work for a relatively small business. And yeah, you know, I think the typical engineering student, you know, we look at, you know, the Boeings, the Lockheeds, all the big exciting names you see on the news and all that. And that seems cool. And I have a lot of friends who have gone down that path and they seem happy with it. But, you know, working at a small business, I kind of like the breadth I get. And I think, you know, while I can really apply a lot of engineering and then really get my hands dirty with the engineering, I really get to see a lot of more interdisciplinary aspects of businesses and then as well as the industry.
So let's go back to your start working with the company. You mentioned to me in the past that you started out as an intern. Now, was that intern as part of your university program, or was that something you decided, so I'm just going to go out and get this off my own back kind of thing?
Not necessarily, it was not through my university. I met them, I guess through some, like they posted the job through like a university job board, but it was my third year at school. I figured a lot of my friends were going on to internships. A lot of the school kind of encourages that, hey, you really should get some experience in the industry, and I figured that was the best time. And so luckily, I found DHC, the little knob company, and it was a really interesting internship. It really kind of exposed me to, I guess, what's kept me there to this day. And I continue, I worked there through my undergraduate, and then I continued working there through grad school.
So let's think about that time as an intern. I guess some, even school kids will be thinking about where they're going on to study and where they're going to take their career. What's the experience as an intern? Because you often think of an intern as doing all the terrible jobs. And I mean, my own experience when I did internship was a mixture of the terrible jobs and awesome stuff too. How was yours?
So yeah, I think people expect an internship to be you're making coffee for the head honchos, and that was not my experience.
Okay.
So when I came on to EHC in my internship, I think that's one of the, again, we talk about the small organization, that's benefit is there kind of isn't there kind of isn't the time to get coffee for someone else, because stuff needs to get done. And so when I came on board, the company had been it's been around forever. A lot of all their drawings and production data has been on like an AutoCAD, like an old-fashioned like 2D type of thing, and they had the 3D, and they didn't have anyone to do it. So when I came on, I was able to bring in 3D design capability to the company. And so although I was the lowest rung and very early in my academic studies, it was ended up being quite a lot of impact I was encouraged to have, and a lot of impact I was able to have.
Fantastic. So you went from all these AutoCAD designs to what was your 3D design platform that you were then moving into?
Inventor.
Okay, yeah.
Just basically SolidWorks.
Yeah.
For those who are unfamiliar.
Yeah. And no one else could do it, so you went in and did all of that. That must have been fantastic. But I guess you were mentored on other things as well during that time.
Oh, completely, and still am. There's, we're a manufacturer, and a lot of the old folks I work with really are kind of the authorities in their respective fields when it comes to manufacturing. So while I maybe was the guy with the computer skills, the 3D CAD skills, I was able to work with one gentleman who wrote the book on plastic manufacturing, and another gentleman who wrote the book on metal manufacturing, and I still work with them to this day, and I still continue to learn so much from them. And so that exposure has been really good. And I think and that's being able to pick the brain of people like that, I think, is also something that perhaps at a bigger company they wouldn't have the patience for.
You talked earlier about the breadth of opportunity and exposure in a small company, and I can totally see that and understand that myself, and I'm sure many other people can. For the students out there, what kind of things, particular products, industries have you been working on at? Is it custom manufacturing organization that you work with?
You mean
what different industries, what products, things like that? Yeah.
So certainly. So I guess primarily, what I've really dived into has been like aerospace and defense. And my product line is one that's, it's my company and one competitor. And so we kind of set the bar for our little series of products, the knobs that go into like cockpits and all that. And so there's a lot I need to learn about aerospace, a lot about defense. There's a certain way that industry needs to speak. But on the other hand, I have some very big projects in medical. which is just as serious, if not more hand, and they have their own different language as far as their very high expectations and their very high requirements. Automotive, and then a lot of just general purpose. I mean, there are toys on Amazon you can buy that I've designed. So and when I say full breadth, I really mean it's there. I don't think there's an industry that we haven't got our hands on at some point.
That really is very wide range. So you're dealing with all the high security issues in defense, and I know from having worked with organizations in defense myself in the past, there's a lot of rigor that you have to go through.
So much.
And then you say medical, obviously safety is the number one priority. Is there a lot of paperwork that you have to go through from that side of things, for approval?
Yes, lots. And I would say it's different within aerospace and medical, and I think I'm glad to do both. And there's a mentality behind it that I think, the paperwork guides a thought process that really is surrounded about just guaranteeing safety. And specifically with some of these medical programs I've worked in, is working with the clients, seeing the world through their medical goggles has been very impactful, and there's some lessons from them that I pick. I'm always reflecting on with my little shoulder angel.
So to understand this, you have a medical organization or a defense organization, then they'll come to you to outsource an element of a product or an entire product. Is that correct in my understanding?
Yes, but I also have a menu, if you will. So at least I have a product line. I've got a catalog you can open up and pick from what you want from there. And a lot of those are designed around advanced applications. But so I think on the aerospace side, it's taking a product of mine and adapting it for an application. So, hey, I really like, this option on your menu. However, we've got this very unique application that requires, this chemical with this secrecy, with this safety criticality. And so that's where the engineering comes in, is how do you adapt to all of that. And on the other end, they might come to me and say, I don't like any of those options. Here's what I want. We've done that, but we're expecting, however many of these to come in to meet every spec on this packet of paperwork, to perform out of the box, and to, keep our pilots, our doctors, our patients safe,
And so are you being integrally involved in that manufacturing process in terms of, are they manufacturing, are you manufacturing, are you outsourcing the manufacturing?
So I am manufacturing, and I try to be as deeply involved in the manufacturing as I can be. So in my shop here in New York, I've got a lot of capability as far as that. I've got some partners I work with in the New York area, in the Northeast, who I'll work with and work with very closely, and then some clients, overseas, partners overseas. And whether it's in my shop or with one of these partner shops, I still tend to be as involved as I can. And so I'll be, and that involves going to these shops, whether they're in, 20-minute drive or perhaps, a 14-hour flight. And I really try to be with the guys on the floor and really think through the problems, because, that's how that's the only way to really dial things out in a way that's timely and effective.
And again, thinking about students out there who are thinking, well, what's the difference between a desk-based engineering job and a job where I can get my hands dirtier? Because some engineers go into engineering with that intention of being really hands-on, but from a very clever perspective. How much do you really get to be hands-on, as much as you'd like to be, or how?
Yeah, so that certainly is that hands-on versus desk is certainly a thought of upcoming engineers. you know, and at least for me, that was a goal of mine, is to be hands-on. And I distinctly remember this one professor of mine who, towards the end of school, kind of sat us all down and gave us a lecture of, hey, I know all you kids want to really get your hands dirty and be on the field and really apply in that regard. However, you got to understand the engineering field is not like that, and you really need to give up on, you really need to recalibrate that expectation. And I just remember being so disappointed by that. However, I have been lucky that at least in what I've been doing, I find that I can be as hands-on as I want. Sometimes I have to be more hands-on than I'd like. So it's been good in that regard. And when I say hands-on, I mean, I'll be in a factory on the other side of the world with the operator. Sometimes I'll be in my machine shop, trying to drill something out myself to play with it. Sometimes I'm making my own prototypes. Really, doing what I have to do in order to move these projects along.
And do you think having been part of this smaller organization rather than the large organization has given you that very unique opportunity to see your engineering role from, I suppose, end to end, from you being at your desk and coming up with a concept? And you've mentioned to me how you actually get to work with customers like perhaps salespeople might in some larger organizations. And then on the other hand, you're in the machine shop drilling components, and then maybe, I don't know, are you assembling things sometimes? You might have to step in and assemble stuff. Is that right?
That is, you have that completely correct. And yeah, it's I guess I've never thought about it. Have I ever assembled anything? But I certainly have. And that's, if you get 5 out the door today, and I've got the screw in whichever my hand, but I wouldn't say that's a common thing. But yeah, when I say breadth, like I said earlier, I think it's within industries. So like we just discussed about, but I think it is also within disciplines. So yeah, I think I get to work with sales folks, with clients, which is its own challenge. I think I get to deal with that, which is, I think, a little unconventional for an engineering position. And deal with, at least in my company, I deal with the finance people, the accounting people. So it's, I think the breadth goes that way as well. And I think, the overall goal, whether it's mine or perhaps a student watching this, is, hey, I want to make products. Hey, I want to, make stuff. Depending on the organization, the industry, I think there's a limit to what an engineer is doing with that. So at a bigger company, the engineer is making the product, designing the product, but he or she may not be selecting what product they're making. So perhaps, that might be a marketing department saying, hey, we need to make one twice as big. And the engineer's like, fine, I'll make one twice as big. And I think that impact, as far as making, and I would segment that, I'd call that, instead of making, so you'd have another department making a design specification while the engineer actually turns those into product specifications. And I think when I say enjoy the breadth of smaller business, I think I have the flexibility to impact design specifications along with the product specifications.
Right.
And it's a subtle difference, but I think it's one that is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see how that would be. Now, you started out as your intern. You worked there while you were studying both your undergraduate and your postgrad. Have I got all that terminology right? Because I get it mixed up with what you guys do in the USA. I apologize. And then you said you loved it so much, and they obviously loved you so much that they said, stay with us and be a design engineer. And how was that experience? Did you at any point think, maybe I'd like to go off somewhere else? My other friends are going off to do, work for Lockheed or work for Tesla or whomever. Did you ever think that should be the way I should go, or were you already kind of very much convinced on where you stand?
I would answer that question with yes. And so, I think especially earlier on, um, the potential paths that I considered were, the potential paths to consider. They're, it's, hey, this is the great internship, and perhaps maybe this has been a great, entry level full-time position. Hey, let's completing some academic programs, like what's next? Will I stay here? Will I go elsewhere? And yeah, of course, that's something I've evaluated. At the same time, as I worked longer at the same company and develop our relationships with my colleagues and and just learn more about it, I think as time went on, it became, clear that it is the right option.
I think maybe, and do you think there might be an element of when you're younger, you'll look at the big companies and the idealized vision of what your career would be. And then everybody goes off and does their own thing and they share their experiences. And perhaps you realize that actually that idealized view isn't a reality. And actually this is way better suited to achieving in terms of you being able to get variety and hands-on. The opportunity that you have at your current company gives you all of that.
So I kind of wish I had that perspective earlier on. I do have that now, and I think that's a perspective I reflect on. And when I speak to friends or people in the other industry and hear their experience and the ways they like it or ways they comment, and I look back, I'm like, no, I kind of like how I've gone. I wouldn't say that was as clear early on, because my friends would be in a similar position. What I would say is, I think early on, especially younger, a younger self, you think of, hey, okay, I graduated, get a job, and there isn't quite a finish line or something past that. It's just, hey, okay, here's the next thing I'm doing. And I think the longer I've been at my company, the clearer I've seen, or the more understanding I have of, like, hey, this is not just a job, it's a career. And there's a, the further I walk down this path, the more more doors that'll open. And I think that's something I see bits and pieces of since I was an intern. And I think that's what's been the convincing to what's been reassuring about keeping here.
So you talked earlier, we talked about the internship. You did a lot of, you were transferring designs from 2D AutoCAD into 3D Inventor, and then you were carrying on studying. You came out, you became a design engineer. How did your job role change, or was it just a gradual transition as you built up more skills and more interfaces with customers in the manufacturing process?
It changed as far as I guess, just to be silly, what I would say is it went from 100% of just the fun stuff, and then to then adding on some of the actual responsibilities. So perhaps an internship, I'm just making pretty models and running back and making prototypes and really seeing just doing concept to paper, concept to part. But then as you develop it, well, now there's more to it than that, and now that is working with the client. That is negotiating arrangements, reviewing specifications, managing expectations, and I guess making the commitments happen. The joke I always make is, it's the engineer's the guy who makes the lies come true. So it's like it's it's the, yeah, we can do it, or yeah, we can do it by then, and that lie needs to come true. And so that responsibility is, okay, making that happen.
Wow, what a statement. Well, you've obviously been very successful in it, because then you went on to be an engineering operations manager. and you turned all these things into truths, which is amazing. What
But I can.
It's a very, engineering is so rewarding in that respect, isn't it? You have people's visions of what they want, and you get to make things come true, turn things into reality, and have an impact on society and things, even if it's making toys on Amazon or designing something significant for the defense industry or saving a life with a medical device. Big impact. Tell us about your engineering operations manager role, and then what the step up and how all that changed, because all of a sudden you've got a whole different skill set to think about there, a whole different level of expectations to consider and things.
Yeah, and I think that change, it was, when I say, if I saw a road and a path that seemed attractive, I think that would have been the next step, and it was, and yeah, it became, all right, I'm the engineer, I'm the guy who's focused on the products from the engineering standpoint, but now it's, well, now I got to start managing. Instead of managing just projects, I'm managing people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then, working with my production staff in my shop, having a close relationship with my machinist, with my painter, with my warehouse, and then a closer relationship with the tasks that involve it there. So now, if I've got a shipping container of parts on the other side of the world, how do I get it where it needs to go in a way that makes sense and is gets to the client? And so again, I think that was a change of an increase of breadth, really, of a hey from the engineering, but now add production, add quality, add warehousing, add logistics, and just kind of adding those little elements to really be in charge of the full, I would call it the full product realization process. So at no point am I really handing it off to anybody. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are fully responsible for that, and whether it's good or bad, you have to be the one to scoop up all of it. You've done really well over the course of your career. What you said, you've had like 5 to 6 years in your engineering career, and you're already an engineering operations manager. You're saying you're dealing with things all around the world. That must, pretty good sense of achievement there for you.
Well, I appreciate you putting it that way, and I think so. It's yeah, I agree. I think that's I'm proud of, and you've had I'm very intimidated by the other folks you've had on this podcast, because they've been doing it a lot longer than I have, but at least for a guy who is very early in his career, I am proud of what I've been able to do so far.
I think you show to young engineers out there the potential that is out there. Do you think there are certain things that have helped you get where you already are today? Okay, you must be a very much of a skilled engineer, but from a technical standpoint, but there's so much more to getting where you are that makes you an all-rounded engineer. What do you think those factors that have really been important to you, that you could perhaps advise other students to recognize those importance, build certain skills there? What would they be?
That's a good question. I would say, and it's the advice that I want to give you. It's yes, it's very important to have strong technical skills, and it's very important to do well in the coursework that's applicable to your industry. But I would say is to really keep your eyes open for just with everything. And so, like, one of the things I always say is like in younger education, high school, middle school, I was the math science guy, and I was never that interested, committed, or that successful when it came to, like, the writing courses, any of that. And that was just something I want the answer. I want to be able to do math and get an answer. And so one of the things I learned going to engineering school is I like writing and I'm a good writer. And within my program, I had a lot of opportunity to really study some of the other disciplines that I think an engineer typically wouldn't study and perhaps maybe wouldn't want to. And I don't think if I went back in time and looking forward, but I say I wanted to, but I'm glad I did. And so, getting good at speaking, getting good at a lot of those tasks, I think is very important, especially in the professional world, because, there's being able to develop a technical solution, which is very important and very challenging. But then there's also being able to communicate that to someone else, and that someone else could be someone who understands the technical, it could be someone who doesn't, and you need to be able to do that. I'd also
recommend. You touched on earlier about managing expectations as being one of those really important factors as well.
Oh, certainly. And that comes down to, and that's not easy. That's,
particularly when you don't know how things are going to progress as you go into a project. Sometimes you're a little blind until you get into it, and it's managing those expectations as you progress through them is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, and it's very difficult and disappointing when you do have to get to a point where perhaps you didn't meet an expectation. And I think it's an important skill to be able to address that. I think it's I don't know. I guess again, a task that I think is important, especially for another early career or student, is get good at delivering bad news and honestly. And I think, I see a lot of folks who really want to paint a nice picture and do really well when things are going well, but when a project, and there's always gonna be a hiccup. It's gonna happen, and obviously, you want to get good enough that you can see them coming and see if you can address them. But if and when you don't, being able to say, "Oops, here's what happened," and I mean, I think that's a difficult thing, and I think that's it would be important for a younger person to reflect on.
I think it's also a perspective on failure, isn't it? I mean, many people say that the most successful people have been have failed the most times because they've learned from those failures. But I guess it's also, they might have learned from them, but they're resilient to come back from those failures and recognize that in many ways, failures are just part of being successful, part of getting to where you are is.
Yeah. I agree with that completely, and I will use discretion with examples because there are some people watching. But I think especially like even when I talk about, hey, I've learned how to work with the aerospace industry. I've learned to work with the medical industry. A lot of that came from some hard lessons of where I had to learn that, where it's I didn't read out a book how to do it. It was something didn't go well, and it was important to reflect on it, and made me a stronger engineer because of it. And so, when I'm training a younger person, I have my own internship program here. I usually, I'll start to put more proper nouns to these experiences. It's like, hey, I did that once and it went poorly. Here's why it went poorly. And like the type of mentality that I developed because of it. And I try to pass that on as best I can.
Yes, absolutely. It's very, very, very important. I want to remind everybody who's watching this live, we've got the chat box there. If you do want to put anything in the chat box, let us know where you're watching from, or if you've got any questions for Zach. Now, you may be watching this on demand. And then, of course, you can put your questions in the comment box, and we'll hunt Zach down so that he can answer them at a later date. But Zach's also on LinkedIn, so I'm sure that, Zach, if people wanted to reach out to you, they could find you.
Oh, yes, please. If everyone who's watching wants to connect, say hi, or pick my brain anyway, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Now, I quickly want to think about the role of role models. You are very much advocating, you run your own internships. Did you have any particular role models, I guess real people, but also people that you don't know, i.e. scientists or engineers from the past that you're in awe of, that's inspired you to pursue this career?
Of course. I think in both of both types you mentioned. So, you know, just as a little kid, fascinated with this kind of stuff. I read, watched every documentary or read every biography of, all the big guys: Henry Ford, Igor Sikorsky, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, all those guys who've really, the guys who make solving big problems with technical solutions made that cool, or make that interesting. So on that end, certainly those are the folks that that I've found very interesting. And then also, I guess more personally, I'd say my grandfather's an engineer. Didn't quite know him, but unfortunately, a lot of his, I always heard a lot of stories. A lot of his, products, designs are still kind of floating around, which is kind of cool. We got some, our outdoor furniture is something he hacked together with his welder. My father, we were the typical like shade tree mechanic. I'd hold the flashlight while he was fixing his car in the front yard, and that was always just like my favorite thing to do. And then in my career, was the gentleman who hired me, Mike, who really learned a lot from. And then some of those, as I mentioned earlier, there's some of these folks who I would say are like top of their field in engineering. So there's this gentleman, Frank, who's, I guess, he's really been a mentor to me. He's he's the guy who took me to China the first time and showed me what it's like to really visit a factory. He wrote, he's literally wrote the book on plastic. So yeah, it's really a lot of people that I look up to, and people I look up to are usually ones who are good at, impressive engineers, impressive technical people.
Brilliant. And now we talk about drive life with an engineer, and we like to put the whole journey in there. Now, when I asked you to represent your career in vehicles, you chose one vehicle, which is a Golf GTI in red, specifically red, not black, not white, not gray, but red. What was your thinking about this choice? You probably weren't expecting me to ask that, but I thought I'd throw that in there at the end.
No, I was.
You have a Golf GTI.
I do.
Okay.
And it is red. It is not the one pictured here, but it's very close. Yeah, you did ask me, hey, pick a car that represents your career, and I have to go back to the GTI, and I think it's. It's and I would, I guess I'd relate to it because it's, it kind of has to. It's kind of a jack of all trades. It kind of has to do everything. So, you can fit 4 people in it, and you can put all your luggage. I've moved apartments in it. I've put all sorts of, greasy car or boat parts in it. But on the same side, it also is it's fast. It handles well. It's got the sporty bits to it. In New York here, we get some bad weather. It can't, the car needs to be able to handle some some deep potholes and some tall snow, and so it's got to do that too. And so I guess the way to relate to it is kind of in the same way I think I've got decent breadth of. I think the GTI is similarly the jack of all trades.
I think it sounds like a really good fit to your career. I thought it was a great choice when she talked through the whole of your career and came up with that car. Great interview. Really, really interesting, Zach. Thank you so much for your time today. If anybody has got any questions, pop them in the chat box because we'll be wrapping up in a minute. How's the dog, Zach? Zach recently got a puppy, and being a dog lover myself, I can't help but ask how the puppy is.
Of course, she is wonderful. Every Zoom meeting I've been on, it always corresponds to her nap time. So unfortunately, she can't say hi. But yeah, she's a 4-month-old Shiba Inu, great little dog. She's keeping me busy, but otherwise has been absolutely great and cute little companions to have.
Fantastic. I'm a massive advocate of the companionship of dogs, particularly for getting you out and exercising in the midst of the horrible weather that we've got at the moment. You can't escape from it with the dog. I don't know what your weather's like in New York, but it's not been great here in the UK.
It's actually nice and clear today, but it's very cold.
Okay.
So 25 Fahrenheit maybe.
Oh, okay. Right, well, that's it. Thank you so much, Zach. I remind everybody who's watching this, but this is part of the Drive Live with an Engineer series. We interview different engineers every month. We've got another one coming up on the 16th of December with Kirsten Penton. So she'll be joining us then to talk about her role as a mechanical and manufacturing engineer. Then in the new year, we jump to a frequency of every fortnight. We've got lots of different people joining us through January and February, and it will be every fortnight. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the playlist if you are enjoying these. Do feel free to share them on with other people. They are available on the Tech Equipment YouTube channel forever and a day. So do access those if you're interested. Zach, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a great opportunity.
Brilliant. And I say goodbye to everybody. Thank you and